language and scenes that may disturb some viewers.
Children have been physically assaulted where the system's failed, where the agencies failed to keep them safe. No child deserves to be put in this situation. No child deserves to be treated as a dollar figure rather than a human being.
Isn't this a rank failure by your department?
I think it's a rank failure at many, many levels.
Welcome to Four Corners. Rank failure doesn't begin to capture the pain of a mother who's discovered that her disabled child has been sexually abused in care, nor the pain of a victim who finds it impossible to adequately describe what's happened to them. Imagine finding out that your child has been abused and then having to come to terms with the fact that police and prosecutors are reluctant to trust the victim's evidence. The shock of realising that the very thing that made your child vulnerable, their disability, also serves to protect the perpetrator. In 2015, a Senate inquiry heard evidence that abuse and neglect of people with a disability living in supported accommodation around the country was rife. This month, the federal government rejected the committee's recommendation for a royal commission. Instead, it's promising a new watchdog under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which the government says will ensure serious complaints are properly investigated. Tonight, Four Corners exposes the treatment of some of our most vulnerable citizens. Linton Besser reports.
Andrew Hislop's auntie Sheila is bringing him home for a visit with his mum.
Hello. 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 How are you? Good to see you, darling. Oh, I got a wee surprise for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. Oh, I think you'll love that one.
Thanks, Mum.
Hey, thank you. Yeah.
Andrew's mum, Jean, is 87 and can't care for him herself.
Can you have a wee look? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
It's a new one.
Yeah.
Andrew has Down syndrome and has been living in a group home with other disabled people since Jean put him in care 20 years ago.
My husband was going blind and he had a heart problem. And Andrew, so outgoing, wanted to go shopping and he'd go for a walk, and I couldn't handle the two of them. So I had to make a decision. And I thought it would be good for him because he's so good with company, and I thought it would be really good for him, you know. And so that's what we did. We put him in the hands of Human Services. I'm sorry I did it. I really am. I never realised things were so bad.
So, Andrew, we're making television about people with a disability.
Yeah.
Trying to understand, what the difficulties are in giving them a good home to live in. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your home where you live?
Upset.
A bit upset.
I moved.
Do you ever feel afraid?
Yes.
What of?
Hurt.
Being hurt.
Yeah.
2 years ago, Andrew was assaulted in his group home by one of the staff.
It took Andrew 4 days before he told his supervisor. But in the meantime, he had been coming down here, and he couldn't even sit in this chair. He was squirming. And I says, "What's the matter?" And he dropped his trousers and said, look what he done to me. Look what he done to me.
This is the group home where Andrew lives. It's run by the Victorian Department of Health and Human Services. In June 2015, the department told Jean her son had been sexually assaulted. She asked Andrew, who has the mental age of a child, what happened.
The person went into the bathroom and Andrew told him to get out. And he came over and he grabbed his genitals. Then I tried to find out, I questioned him then quietly. Did he get into bed with you? Did he push you in the back, Andrew? Anything I could think of to try and see if he had been sexually assaulted. But, I mean, you can't get that out of a 5-year-old. They don't know. They've no idea. And I still think to this day Andrew was sexually penetrated because of the sudden onset of impactation, constipation, and crying and running away. It was dreadful to see.
Department officials told Jean the staff member had been sacked on the spot. Victoria Police interviewed Andrew, but the employee wasn't charged. This happens time and time again across Australia, where cases collapse because police and prosecutors decide people with a disability make poor witnesses in court.
I felt that I should have been present at the police interview. Maybe I could have helped, but I wasn't even informed, nothing. No information.
Yeah, up again.
Up again, okay.
Andrew has repeatedly tried to run away since the assault, but Jean can't look after him and he has nowhere else to go.
Batman.
Batman, oh yeah. I've never done anything like this before. I've never had to handle anything like this. I didn't know where to turn to. There was nobody.
It must have just been so hard.
Yeah, very hard. When you're on your own and no husband to help you, nobody cares. But I'm a fighter. I don't give up.
I was.
Jean is fighting to find him a new home.
But we're just trying to do the best for you and make you happy again. Happy Andrew, okay?
I want to move.
Well, we're really trying hard. Remember me saying that to you on the phone? We're really trying hard to help you. Mm-hmm. Aren't we? See? We'll get there. Mm. We'll get there. You'll get your wishes. It'll all come good, okay? All right? Mm.
Andrew's father died 12 years ago, and now he's worried what might happen to his mum.
I happen to you. Die.
I'm not going to die. Oh, a long time. Long time yet.
I say first, Dad. Dad, I love you. I miss you. Son, Mum, should I have been? I miss you, Dad. I do.
Who's going to care for him? Yeah. It's only me. It's a sad world, isn't it?
You've been fighting in his corner for decades.
45 years I've been fighting for him. I brought him into this world and I love him. I'll do all I can to help him. Now I'm 88 soon. I'm still battling.
Phil Swan just had his 50th birthday, but he has the intellectual age of a child. He's lived in a group home for more than a decade.
Hey, Phil. We put them on a bit better. Gonna have some morning tea?
Yeah.
Sounds good. You ready? Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, come on then.
Phil's mother died 8 years ago. Now the job of fighting for his rights has been taken up by his sister-in-law, Beverly Swan, and his brother, Peter.
Right.
Hello, Phil. I'm Linton.
I am Linton.
How are you?
Good.
How was the ferry ride?
Good.
Phil Swan's group home is run by a non-profit organisation called Lifestyle Solutions. Phil, I'm interested in your home.
My home.
Yeah. Do you like it there?
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2012, Phil Swan's normally happy demeanour suddenly changed.
He wasn't laughing, which wasn't like Phil at all. I knew something was wrong. I'd had him to the GP multiple times and we'd done tests and everything. But I didn't know what was wrong. I just knew something wasn't right.
On Melbourne Cup Day that year, Phil Swan had a bad fall in the bathroom. Or so Beverly was told.
I did get an incident report saying that Phil had slipped over in the bathroom, but I didn't think anything of it at that time. I turned up for shift on Melbourne Cup Day and the other staff member was sitting on the chair next to Philip talking about what had happened because he had a Band-Aid and things on his head. The staff member had said, oh, he'd been to Melbourne Cup and he'd come home and they'd fed him full of crap and whatever, and he shit himself and things, and he fell over his walker, over the top of his walker in the bathroom and hit the wall. Hit his walker and hit the wall.
Edna Laws claims her colleague's behaviour towards Phil was disturbing.
He continued to sit with Phil. He was talking about what had happened, but in a real angry way, swearing and all the rest of it, and sort of actually pushed on the Band-Aid on Philip's bridge of his nose.
A few days later, Edna Laws noticed Phil Swan was unusually withdrawn.
And I said, what's the matter, mate? And he said, oh, nothing. I said, if you've got something to say, it's okay, you can tell me. So then he started to say the staff member's name, but he couldn't even say the name. The first initial came out, and I said, it's okay. I said, I'm here. I said, if there's anything wrong, I can help you. So then he told me what had happened. He said that he was pushed, and he showed me sort of with his actions that he was pushed in the bathroom.
Edna Laws reported what Phil told her, and Lifestyle Solutions began an investigation. Edna says she was told by a manager not to tell the family.
I do believe it was 5 weeks before Bev was notified. She should have been notified, straight up. It was abuse, like, they're entitled to know, to support their family member. I spoke to Edna on the phone and I said to her, what's going on? She said, Bev, I can't tell you, I'm not allowed to tell you. But if you ask me a question, I'll answer it truthfully. And I said, so this accident, was it an accident? And she said, I don't believe so. And I said, well, so what happened? And she did tell me what had happened. And it was at that point she said that Philip had been assaulted by another staff member. I was furious. I was fit to be tied. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that nobody had told me. Not one phone call. I was furious that they prevented another staff member from notifying me what had taken place.
Without his family's knowledge, Phil Swan had been formally interviewed and filmed by a Lifestyle Solutions manager. Four Corners has obtained a damaged copy of the video.
He pushed me, he hit me, crossed my side.
Are you scared of Glenn?
Yeah.
Why?
He said, Glenn, you not do that in the bathroom.
Do what?
Push people in the bathroom, hit me in the bathroom tiles.
Okay. And you wanted to stop?
Yeah, stop.
Okay.
He's just like a 5-year-old in a man's body, like, I don't know how people do it. It's sick. It's more than cruel, it's sick. People do different jobs for different reasons, and there's a lot of people in disabilities that I've seen over the years, they're not suited for the job.
The staff member was eventually sacked. Four Corners obtained the Lifestyle Solutions internal investigation, which found he had assaulted Philip Swan by pushing his head into the tiled wall of the bathroom and assaulted another client by punching him on the nose.
Out of that, they believed that Philip had been assaulted on more than one occasion, although they were unable to give a time frame for the assaults. So we believe that it was happening for quite some time.
The way Lifestyle Solutions handled the case destroyed any prospect of a criminal prosecution. A year later, the organisation wrote to the Swan family admitting that the failure to report the incident to New South Wales Police has had a significant impact on the police being able to thoroughly investigate and charge the offender.
They didn't go ahead because the evidence had been tampered with, because Philip had been interviewed 3 times. We just said, well, that's not good enough. The investigating officer said, well, we dropped the ball. And I just said, well, you think? They just gave up and just said, well, we did. You know, we didn't do it properly and that was it.
It meant the staff member who assaulted Phil Swan was free to continue working with vulnerable people.
What's going on, mate? Yeah, Linton Besser from Four Corners. Yeah.
His name is Glenn Richardson, and he says he never assaulted Phil Swan.
No, that never happened. Philip fell over that evening.
But why would he have made that up?
Philip was basically coerced by another employee that I didn't have a great relationship with, yeah.
Glenn Richardson admits he was also sacked from the next disability provider he worked at. but says it was because he stuck up for the clients.
And you still work in the disability sector today?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Glenn Richardson insists he received a payout from Lifestyle Solutions for unfair dismissal.
I have a statement that basically says I can't discuss this, that the findings were found to be incorrect.
Well, all I'm asking is for you to show me the piece of paper
If
that
I can
says the
find it
findings
somewhere,
were
yeah,
incorrect.
it's probably dug somewhere. If you can give me a card, I'd appreciate it.
No problem.
I'd like to see the piece of paper. I'd like him to produce it. If he's innocent and he's been exonerated, show me the piece of paper.
What made the abuse of Phil Swan particularly traumatic was that 10 years earlier, Phil's other brother, Jeffrey, who was also disabled, was murdered in a group home run by another operator.
I just didn't want anything to happen to Phil. And while everyone says, you know, it's unlikely it would ever happen again, things do happen again, for whatever reason. And whether you're unlucky or you've had the misfortune of having it happen, I was terrified. I was terrified that he was going to lose his life in care.
Lifestyle Solutions has a checkered history. In 2009, it took a group of disabled clients to Eagle Reach, a wilderness retreat in the New South Wales Hunter Valley. During the night, one of the clients went missing. She disappeared near the top of a 450-metre high lookout.
Yep, this is where it all happened. This is where I first heard her first response to me, and the sound was coming from down there.
Down there?
Yep, all the way down there.
Mark Aberley is the former Lifestyle Solutions worker who climbed down to rescue her.
That's a long way.
It is a long way. I don't even know how she survived. She was immobilised, scratches, her bottom eyelid was basically not there anymore, just hanging by a thread, and she was moaning in pain. So I took off my shirt and put it on her to warm her up.
After the dramatic rescue, Mark, seen here in news footage from the time, was ordered not to speak about what had happened.
I was met up the top after I was finally brought up by the rescue workers and put in a car and basically told not to talk to any media, don't expose anything that's going on.
In another incident, on the night of January 29 this year, 2 vulnerable teenage children went missing from a Lifestyle Solutions home in Western Sydney. They wandered along this road, kilometres from home.
They're severely autistic, very intellectually delayed. One of them's not toilet trained, still wearing nappies. They've got no sense of risk whatsoever.
By sheer luck, the police found the boys at 5 a.m. the next day.
Anything could have happened. It was dark. It was not like it was 5 minutes away. It wasn't like it was 500 metres away. It was 6.8 kilometres from that home. I could only imagine what those boys would have been thinking. There should have been someone that was awake checking on those kids.
Melissa Christian recently quit Lifestyle Solutions in disgust at its chaotic management of high-needs children with disabilities.
They're placed in situations with other children where they've been sexually assaulted, where they've been physically harmed. They've lived in what I would describe as a domestic violence situation in services.
And that is a shocking indictment.
Yep.
This is a 2015 iPhone video filmed by a teenager inside a Lifestyle Solutions home in Western Sydney. A fight breaks out between 2 boys while their carer is off duty upstairs.
Blame your fucking disabilities. I hate
The boy being attacked slaps the couch to signal he can't breathe.
No, you started this! You started this! You started it! You started it! Now I'm ending it! I'll do it again, I won't let go ever again.
The boy loses consciousness and he begins having a seizure.
Wait, there's no need to be fit. Oh my God.
On your side. Come on.
Another teenager runs upstairs to get the carer.
Your side. You alright?
Quick!
You alright? You alright? You alright? You alright?
Oh my God.
Hold his legs. Hold his legs.
The boy safely recovered.
Is this unusual?
No, it's not. It's not unusual in a sense that there's been a number of scenarios where I could say quite confidently children have been physically assaulted, where the system's failed, where the agencies failed to keep them safe.
In Australia, disabled children are 3 times more likely to experience abuse than other children. Melissa Christian was particularly appalled by the case of a 13-year-old boy we'll call John.
He was developmentally delayed. He had high risks, both physical and sexualised behaviours. He was extremely violent at times. Yeah.
Because John was so difficult, Lifestyle Solutions was paid a much higher sum by the government, enough for him to be housed on his own.
How much money was he worth a year?
I couldn't say off the top of my head, but close or in excess of, I think about $1 million, thereabouts.
Despite the extra money, John was placed in a house with 2 other more vulnerable children. He went on to sexually assault one of them.
No child deserves to be put in this situation. No child deserves to be treated as a dollar figure rather than a human being. And they have rights. They have they deserve respect, and we're entrusted to do what's right for them, and we're entrusted to advocate for them, and we failed.
Four Corners can reveal that in just 1 year, no fewer than 4 disabled people in the Newcastle Hunter area died while in Lifestyle Solutions care. The 2014 deaths have become part of a major investigation by the New South Wales Ombudsman.
These were individuals who had very significant health challenges. They needed to have thorough health assessments, but much more importantly, the health assessments then needed to be actioned by the staff in a consistent fashion. And so the risk is, if appropriate action isn't taken with people with very high risks, the risk is the possibility of death or of fundamentally compromised health. I could give a lengthy explanation, but let me put it simply. The practice was unacceptable.
Deputy Ombudsman Steve Kinmond is demanding major changes to the way the organisation is run.
We saw enough evidence of significant matters that should not have taking place, to draw a line in the sand and to say we need a broad practice review as to the operations of Lifestyle Solutions.
In Victoria, Lifestyle Solutions is also under investigation for the physical mistreatment of some clients.
We've had complaints and we've acted on them.
What are the complaints?
Well, again, because
in general,
they go to areas of poor provision of service, of making sure that that kind of rights to a decent outcome that someone with a disability or their families or their carers would expect to occur when that doesn't occur.
Have people been harmed in the care of Lifestyle Solutions?
As I'm advised, sadly, yes. So in terms of a response to that, that is why the kind of action that we've taken in taking administration of particular facilities off that group has been rolled out.
Lifestyle Solutions declined to be interviewed for this program. In a statement, the organisation said it was deeply saddened by these matters and realised the impact on families and other people we support. The organisation said the cases identified by Four Corners had led to reforms of policy and procedure, while others remain the subject of regulatory review.
We have significant concern about what we've seen to date. From my perspective, there's a large number of clients currently being supported in that environment, and the impact for the clients, some 1,500 very, very high needs clients, of suddenly no longer having a service would be almost catastrophic. But having said that, the challenge is in Lifestyle Solutions Court.
Julie Phillips.
Disability advocate Julie Phillips says the abuse of disabled people in care is rife.
Parents should not be trusting service providers and they must do due diligence all the time because the evidence is that it's very unsafe and there's a lot of risk. Government don't seem to be willing to really give consequences when there are reports of abuse of any kind. Until those things are addressed, everyone who is putting a loved one into a service should be very, very wary.
Another provider that's been investigated in Victoria is Autism Plus, a for-profit company that operates 5 group homes in Victoria, including this one.
I could not sleep knowing my son was in that house with it. I used to in actual fact, I would park my car at the front of that house and just watch because I wasn't permitted to go in, but I could see what was, if lights were turned on. I'm sorry, I'm being a sook. If lights were going on or going off, and at least I felt close to my son so that if he did need something, I'd be there. But the reality is, I couldn't protect him at that point. I had to get him out.
Anne Malia's autistic son, Matthew, was being targeted in the Autism Plus group home by another disabled man living there.
For a parent to see their child being groomed by a sexual predator, let me tell you, it is the most horrifying and sickening thing you will ever have to witness in your life.
In September 2014, during visiting hours, Anne saw the man beckon her son over to him.
The man gestured towards the floor. My son got down on his knees. By this point, I was on my feet. I was trying to scream out. I couldn't speak. I knew what was happening. It was really obvious what was about to happen. And this man touched his lips, and my son bent over as if he was in a trance. He bent down and kissed the perpetrator. The perpetrator then made other gestures, which I am not going to go into. And at that point, I yelled at Matthew, and Matthew got up. I reported this to police. I reported to Autism Plus, and for months Autism Plus did absolutely nothing about this. They didn't report to police what we had taken to them.
2 months later, the mother of another disabled client, also named Matthew, discovered her son was being targeted by the same man.
Matthew deserved proper care. It's about time for me to tell this.
Maria Thomas and her family repeatedly warned authorities about the problem, and wrote to the Department of Health and Human Services, horrified at the sexual attacks on Matthew and the fact that this predator is still allowed to remain in the house. They warned that the man continued to show a great determination to get to Matthew and that, given half an opportunity, he will strike again.
We asked them to remove the guy because my son is in danger during that time. Our son is in danger that time. We told them.
Autism Plus was equally horrified. Internal emails obtained by Four Corners show the company demanded the department remove the man immediately. Autism Plus warned he was a significant and ongoing risk, in particular to Matthew as well as to the other clients, and that his move should have been immediate after the last attempted assault. Despite these warnings and repeated close calls, the Victorian government insisted the man remain in the house, until finally, in April 2015, he targeted Matthew Thomas for the 7th time.
Yes, Matthew was sexually assaulted in the shower while he's having a shower. The carer ran away because this young man who's assaulting my son, he's threatening the carer. So he ran away. And he left my son there in the shower. And then that's where this young man assaulting my son. How's that scenario?
Autism Plus were asking your department for this man to be moved out, weren't they?
Well, I'm not advised as to what Autism Plus's particular views on this matter were.
Your department didn't tell you that Autism Plus sought the removal of this man at an earlier date, but was told that wasn't possible.
I'm not advised as to whether that particular outcome was or wasn't the case.
Isn't this a rank failure by your department?
I think it's a rank failure at many, many levels. Now, of course, I can't sadly speak about this particular incident for a variety of reasons, but whether it's this incident, other circumstances, we've seen far too many cases like this.
The man who assaulted Matthew Thomas was finally moved out of the home, and Victoria Police charged him with sexual assault.
Hello?
Because prosecutors were unsure whether the assailant could understand the allegations against him, they dropped the charges last year.
You're kidding me.
Anne Malia didn't know until we told her. The suggestion being that the man behind these assaults couldn't understand the nature of the charges against him.
He understood. I spoke to this kid, this person, this perpetrator every single day I was there. He understood exactly what he was doing. He understood the ramifications. You're kidding me. So he's free to go and do this again, and he's going to be permitted to live with other people with disabilities, other people who don't have a voice, other people who cannot protect themselves, and he's going to reoffend, because he will reoffend.
My opinion is they treat my son like animal, you know. I thought my son is really safe. And knowingly they had incident report. DHS knows it already. Autism Plus knows already. So they should do something about that. They had incident report. Why still keeping this young man that he had the problem sexually? I don't understand, really. I don't understand. I try my very best, but really, I don't understand.
It is only with a Royal Commission that we can fully understand the extent of violence and abuse and neglect of people with disability.
A year and a half ago, a Senate inquiry found abuse and neglect of the disabled was rampant and called for a Royal Commission. This month, the government finally rejected the call.
I think for many people with disability, this is just another kick in the guts, really. It's another way of saying that you are not valued, that your stories, what has happened to you and your experiences of violence, abuse and neglect is not important enough for us to investigate and really interrogate service systems. Well, I say that they are not responding to the breadth and depth of this problem.
The peak disability groups say your decision, Minister, to reject that recommendation is, quote, a kick in the guts and an indication that people with a disability are simply not valued.
Well, all of the stakeholder groups in this area, as well as all of the state and territory jurisdictions, have been engaged in good faith and very productively with the Commonwealth for 3 years in a process of consultation to develop the new safeguarding, quality assurance and enforcement regime that will come in 2018.
The Minister says a new federal disability watchdog to be introduced with the NDIS will address problems of abuse and neglect.
People in the sector in these peak groups are nervous, they're sceptical about the lack of detail and how this new framework will be administered in practice.
It's not, of course, the finishing point for the new system that will be developed, but it's very much an important part in what has been a very long process. Keep in mind here that what we are talking about is an entirely new and very substantial Commonwealth body which will have its own employees completely devoted to maintaining, enforcing, assessing and ensuring compliance with standards for Australians with a disability who are in disability accommodation.
There is no excuse for the kind of tragedies that so many cases like that you've referred to here today, that no government, no individual can possibly defend those. But what we do have is, through the NDIS, an opportunity to do away with the culture and the systems that allowed that to perpetuate, to make sure that as the NDIS rolls out, these kind of terrible circumstances don't occur in the future.
They say you can judge a society by the way it cares for its most vulnerable.
We live in Australia. It's 2017. How can we continue to treat people with disabilities, whether it be intellectual or physical, the way we're treating them? We are stripping them of their dignity.
For these families who have waited such a long time, change isn't coming soon enough.
I just get frustrated, you know. Yeah, I get angry, right? I think all mothers and fathers do. You know, when nothing's getting done and no help's coming, you know. There seems to be, it's always all lack of funding, lack of funding. Just put the funding in the right place and we'll get it done.
We have a choice as a nation. We either say we will make sure that action's taken to protect the rights of people with disability and we'll make sure that the legwork is done, or we'll set up a framework. We won't properly resource it, if that's the case, and we'll pretend that we're committed to the rights of people with disability.